Like a lot of long-term D&D players, when 4th edition came along and they had to justify the new powers system that they had created where every class had at-wills and counters and daily abilities, and the decision was made to just re-break the Forgotten Realms, and we ended up with storylines like the Spellplague, and we ended up with characters that are spell-scarred. My first reaction was not super positive, and I know a lot of longtime players kind of felt the same way. Maybe if you came into Dungeons and Dragons at 4th edition, you didn't really have a lot of background in what had come before. You weren't really drenched in all of the Forgotten Realms lore and history. Maybe it seemed like a really cool idea. And I can say that now that I've played the Chasm. Hey everybody, I'm Kel, and now that you're here, let's talk about Neverwinter. Okay, so that might sound like a crazy statement that the Chasm made me okay with 4th edition, and alright, that would be an exaggeration. Not a big fan of the 4th edition rule set, not a big fan of what it did to the Dungeons and Dragons game, or how it almost tanked the system until 5th edition came along. And whether you love 5e or hate 5e, you've got to admit that 5e saved the game from 4e. Regardless, what the Chasm did is it showed me that there were really cool stories that could be told within the context of this 4e framework, that the Spellscarred were really rich characters waiting to be explored, and that really not a lot of published material had taken the time to really flesh these characters out, at least not published material that I encountered. Maybe there's some great stuff out there that I just didn't see because I was biased against the rule set. It's very, very possible, and I'll admit that. But the Chasm took the Spellplague and put it front and center in a medium that I was fully immersed in as I started playing through Neverwinter. And long after 4th edition was gone, I was getting interested in the story that 4th edition presented. And I have to admit, I didn't expect that was going to be possible. So, what was it that the Chasm did that was so special? Was it raising another banner over another location in Neverwinter? Well, I started out saying, no, that was ridiculous. And then the more I thought about it, the more I have to admit, yeah, that was kind of part of it. The idea of Scar Company and going around and finding these bodies and marking them and then retrieving the banner because the loss of the banner was so meaningful to the members of Scar Company that really feel ignored by the people above them in the city of Neverwinter. You know, even though mechanically it's just another MacGuffin hunt, it's another fetch quest, there's something about the storyline around this MacGuffin hunt, around the fetch quest of this banner, bringing it back and actually raising the banner above Fort Precipice, that really started me along this road of thinking of these characters in Scar Company as people. It really developed a storyline in my head that I started to care about. I mean, really, magic is cool, and monsters are cool, and magic swords are cool, but if you don't have characters that you can really empathize with, that you really care if they live or die, nothing really matters. And Scar Company was really the first thing that I encountered that dealt with the spell plague, or even really the 4th edition Forgotten Realms after the time jump, that really made me step back and say, maybe I could invest again in this setting. Maybe there's something fun to be had here that's more than just rolling imaginary dice and collecting experience points. So, yeah, I guess it was kind of putting that flag up. Didn't really work for me at Icespire Peak, but here in the Chasm, I have to admit, kind of did. And if you're watching another one of my videos, then it's probably not going to come as much of a shock that I'm a storyline gamer. Some people play games so that they can accumulate things like experience points. Some people like to achieve goals, like finishing quests. Some people pursue characters and stories, and I'm definitely in that latter category. I need something that I can latch onto and say, I'm saving this town because it's worth saving, or I'm saving this person because I have an emotional connection, or at least an empathetic connection to who they are or what they are doing. And in the Chasm, I really was not expecting that. I put the Chasm off as long as I could. The first time I played the Chasm was back when you had the option of actually putting something off. These days, if you don't like the Chasm, your choices are either play it anyway or stop playing Neverwinter. Thankfully, I didn't have that two-choice situation. I was able to play the Chasm when I was ready to, and it really caught me off guard. The second thing was Korthon. Now, by the time I got to the Chasm, my wife was already in Dreadring. She had started a little bit before me. I was aware of Korthon, the idea of him, but actually getting to meet him and getting the story behind Korthon, how he had chosen to come here and investigate the Chasm despite what was happening to his body, despite what was happening all around him. The selflessness of this character really spoke to me in a really cool way, and it made me really want to investigate the Chasm and help Korthon out. Scar Company and Korthon, there's a real sense of sacrifice here that really speaks to any sort of armed forces. It was something that you really want to rally behind, and if you have the opportunity to help them out, help them out. They're saving Neverwinter. They might be saving the Sword Coast by doing what they do every day. And that was a pretty heavy plot line for Neverwinter. They really pulled out all the stops when it came to the Chasm and really tugging at the heartstrings. There was a encounter that was removed during Jewel of the North where you were asked by one of the guards to find some flowers on one of these earth nodes and return it to another guard to basically remind her of the beauty that was still inside of her. And while saying that might sound kind of hokey, when you're looking at this environment, and if you really put yourself in the position of one of these spell-scarred soldiers and what they're got to be going through, that was a really meaningful idea. And if you play for any sort of story content, that's the sort of thing that brings you back to the game. That's the sort of thing that keeps you playing. There's also this quest. These soldiers are here in the Chasm in this endless, hopeless assignment, and they're still looking for faith. And so this quest where you go and you consecrate these shrines to Kelemvor and is another sign that when the original team put the Chasm together, they were really thinking in terms of what would the people in Scar Company value? What would they be feeling? What would they be going through? And how do we show that in a way that still allows you to run around and kill monsters and pick up copper pieces and collect treasure? How do we do all of this within the context of Neverwinter so that the people who just want to bash things get to bash things, and the people who want to complete quests get to do that too? And this was a really well-constructed series of adventures. It really caters to just about every acknowledged playstyle, which is pretty difficult to do. And then there's the Cathedral of Madness. And I don't know, what feels like some of the laziest game design in the beginning of Neverwinter. Literally walk into this really cool looking location, and then there's 4 sets of steps that go down to 4 lieutenants' bases, and you've got to do all 4 of them one after the other, collect the 4 MacGuffins, put them in the place, fight the big bad guy. Now, I don't know what it is about Neverwinter and turning chaos into perfect symmetry, like Elemental Evil, where you follow the exact same pattern of quests throughout the entire campaign across all four elements in the elemental chaos. Now we're in the Cathedral of Madness, descending into pure insanity, and we've got these four locations that you have to go through. I mean, sure, you get to pick whatever sequence, but you've got to do all four, and you've got to get your four MacGuffins, and it just, the whole thing is like the opposite of chaos, and it is the definition of boring gameplay. If you show me four doors, and I already know that I've got to go through all four of them, and I've got to find something on the other side, and I'm going to have to fight a lot of monsters on my way to each one, I'm already checking out. And as much as I've come to love the story of Scar Company and care about the characters that are in the chasm, it doesn't matter how cool they are if the adventure falls flat around them. And this is what it looks like when an adventure falls flat. If you set up a dungeon like this in a pen and paper game, your players will be rubbing their eyes halfway through, and they will be ready to go home at the end of the session when they finish the fourth one, if they make it to the fourth one. Because this is the sort of thing that gets people checking their phone. This is the thing that gets people bringing up side conversations, people just goofing off because they're trying to entertain themselves in a situation that was supposed to be fun, and then they realized the dungeon master didn't have any good ideas this week, and so here's four doors with four fights with four MacGuffins, and at the end you fight the big MacGuffin monster. It's just, this one drives me nuts, especially after the unexpectedly good build-up. You've got to get past this hurdle in the middle, and it is quite a hurdle. But you do it, right? Because these days, the road to 20th level leads through the Cathedral of Madness, and there are no detours anymore on the road to 20th level. But just a note, the Cathedral of Madness is supposed to drive the characters mad, not the players. Finally, at last, victory! You've gathered your four MacGuffins and you put them on the special pedestals that you use because the cardinal points make a lot of sense when you're in an area of raw chaos. Anyway, you summon this creature that is actually pretty cool, and you have the climactic battle against Cenobith the Corruptor in the middle of the Cathedral of Madness, and you earn your right to continue on and help Scar Company and Corthon and investigate whatever creepy goings on that are happening underneath Neverwinter in the depths of the chasm. And what's really cool is this one doesn't pull any punches. At the end of this adventure, you've actually gone all the way to the bottom of the chasm. You've actually seen what's down there that's been causing this latest spate of trouble. But that's for next week's video. This is the end of the video for this week, and I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Leave us a comment in the section below. Tell us you'd like to see more, and we'll look for you again next week on Let's Talk About Neverwinter.